So if you're the type that's looking for a fix at the end of the video, if that's a must for you, go watch something else. It's not going to happen in this video, guys. This kind of went off the rails to some degree, so that's reality. It happens. The corrected condenser. The AC is now completely inoperative. It has obviously a slow leak as well, because there was little more than residual pressure in the system. Certainly no liquid refrigerant in the system. So I'm going to change the condenser on this one now. Again, the system was virtually empty, so there was really no need to evacuate it. Has been inoperative now for the last couple of weeks. It started off at the beginning of the season with almost no cooling, minimal at high speed, and now it's down to nothing. Not surprising when you see the condition of this condenser. Okay, so there's the front end removed, guys. Piece of piss. 4 bolts on the top side here, and a bunch of plastic rivets in and around, of course, same old, and a few Phillips screws on the bottom. There you go. There's we need to remove it. Nothing more than a 10mm socket, basically, and where the hell am I? And a fork. Yeah, you guys know what a fork looks like for the plastic rivets. So I'm only going to show you the points of interest here, guys, because again, this installation is virtually identical to the Vitara. Top here, the condenser coil itself is actually held in just 2 shock mounts on the bottom, 2 slots. You can see are rubber mounted there, and yeah, you can see the state of decrepitude once again. Exact same scenario where the coils are literally falling out. I'll just make this point here. Okay, so you can see how badly damaged this is. What isn't falling out is basically beaten over with stones, so little to no airflow. And then the next section up, which is in good condition, is completely shrouded with a bumper here and the structure, which leaves effectively this amount of coil. Yeah, that's not gonna do a great deal of cooling, I guess, is it? So no big surprise there. Yeah, so just a point of interest here, guys. The top here behind the shroud, you can see it's held in with 2 10mm bolts. There's a captive square nut here. These, if you're in the rust belt at all, like me, these are going to be rusted pretty much solid. So a wee practical tip I can offer you, so you don't break the mount point here because it's rusted so solid, and it potentially breach the header tank on the those tabs are actually physically mounted on the header tank of the radiator. Just hold it with a 19mm, so you can actually capture the plastic and hold it solidly and reduce the chances of breaking it with a 19mm socket there. Pressurize it with a nitrogen tank here, guys, and I think I found it. It is the tiniest of tiny leaks. Can you see that bubble right there? It is expanding at a very, very, very slow rate. So just 2 lines, of course, guys. Again, 2 block fittings, 10mm bolts. That's the compressor discharge line, so the in, if you will, to the condenser. Superheated gas into the top side, and of course this is the liquid line. So if they had a subcooler, subcooled liquid, of course, to the out from the receiver dryer on the far side there through the subcooler, and then this line out to the expansion valve in the rear of the firewall, of course, at the firewall. There's the line removed, guys. Let me show you from this side. You can see the O-ring there. Plug them immediately as soon as you remove it, of course, to minimize the moisture ingression. And there's the other one. So this one's got an exterior cap, and the other one kind of has an interior cap. And there's the block fitting, of course. So the condenser should pretty much just lift out. As I said, 2 fasteners on the top, 2 slots shock mounted on the bottom. So there you go. You can see the extent of the damage, and a good portion of the condenser is sitting up here in debris on the rad, right? What a mess. So not surprising it's not cooling. So you just shove it up, guys, release the tabs on the bottom, and then it comes down. Simple, straightforward. A great time to clean the rubbish from the bottom tank, as it's just a flat surface and holds a lot of rubbish there, as well as probably hit some inaccessible areas with some corrosion inhibitor if you're inclined. So just a quick comparison of the two coils, guys. This is a Nissan, not Nissan, but a Nissan aftermarket coil, condenser coil, of course. I bought it again, same brand name, because I thought it fit my Vitara fairly well. So yeah, and it also comes with the O-rings, and these studs are also in the package, which quite honestly have no idea what they're for. Perhaps it's a part number that's utilized on more than one installation. In any case, I don't think I'll be needing those. So the that looks a little bit longer than that block there. I just took a look at the line. There is a little bit of latitude there with respect to the installation of that line, so I don't think that will be an issue. But anyway, we'll get it fitted up. The only way to tell for sure is to get it fitted up. So anyway, that's what it looks like. So as a perhaps I should have mentioned, this does have an integral receiver dryer, guys, with a sock in here. It does come with the sock installed. I checked that on the previous coil that I bought from Nissan, and this actually does have the corrosion protection as well, as opposed to raw aluminum. You can see here, this is actually got a coating of some sort, probably just painted or whatever, right? But they claim it's extended life corrosion protection. So it's in situ here, guys. Just a wee bit of a minor inconvenience with a fit. You can see I've got the shock mount in there, and the holes don't quite line up. This is not quite high enough, and there's really no adjustability here on the slots. So what I did was I just cut the old shock mount, and as you can see, I've doubled it up here so it's solidly mounted, and the holes actually line up. So just a matter of splitting the mount, you know, cut this wee piece off and then double it up there. Should be a practical solution. I don't see any issue with that. So the shroud is back in place here. This small shroud here, guys, 2 bolts, again 10mm, because they're captive in a square nut that's in a plastic bracket integral to the header tank of the rad, as I showed you earlier. Maybe a good idea to apply a wee bit of anti-seize in the event you need to disassemble it at some point in the future. Completely at your discretion, of course. So here's the specs, guys. A wee bit different from the Vitara, because the components are smaller, of course. We're replacing the condenser. I have to replace 10 cc's of oil. It's PAG 46 oil that we require. So I'm going to actually put that right in the condenser itself, syringe. And don't forget to lube the O-rings with the same oil. And I'm going to actually add a 1/4 ounce, about 7.5 milliliters of UV dye as well while I'm at it. Okay. So I have everything fitted up here, guys. The lines are in place with the new O-rings, of course. Torque to the spec. I'll show you the torque spec. Okay, I couldn't find a torque spec in the manual here, guys. It doesn't seem to be published one for the 2 lines on the compressor, on the condenser, sorry. But I know the Vitara manual did publish a spec. It said 108 inch-pounds. I think that was 9 foot-pounds, if my math is correct. So that's what I torqued it actually to. I'll leave it to your discretion. And I'm just sweeping it with nitrogen now. So I have low pressure nitrogen being fed into the low side. I'm going to let this sweep for 3 minutes. And then I'm going to reverse the lines. I'll go from the high side and bleed on the low side for another additional 3 minutes, and then I'll pull a vacuum on it. So just nitrogen, of course. So that's the nitrogen sweep actually done, guys. What I've done now is actually pressurize it with as much nitrogen pressure as I can get from a MIG welder, because I already explained to you, I still don't have the fitting for my nitrogen regulator, so I've got about 55 pounds of pressure in there. I'll leave that for about half an hour just as an initial leak check. Don't be confused by the setup here. I'm just using the high side to the low gauge for the sake of getting greater resolution, same as I did on the Vitara, and we'll come back and check that, and so long as it doesn't move, we'll call that preliminary leak check before we pull the preliminary vacuum. That's 15 minutes, guys, of 55, nearly 60 pounds of nitrogen pressure. That's all I can get. It did not move, so the preliminary leak check is good. So I'm going to put it under vacuum now. Preliminary vacuum check for 5 minutes, and if that holds, well, I'll vacuum it for 5 minutes and then see if it holds for 10 minutes. And if that holds, I'll vacuum it for an additional 90 minutes. Okay, so the pump actually hooked up through the manifold, and I'm going to pull it down into a vacuum for a preliminary leak check for 5 minutes, and then let it sit for say 15 minutes. And if it's tight under vacuum, I'll continue to vacuum it for an additional 90 minutes, as I said. Don't forget to take the cap off. So that was well in excess of 5 minutes actually, guys. Sorry about the glare there. Same procedure, right? Now it's in vacuum this time. I'll let it sit for 15 minutes. Make sure it doesn't leak down. Otherwise I'm wasting my time putting an extended vacuum on it. If it stays tight for 15 minutes, I will then vacuum it for an additional probably 90 minutes plus. Okay, that's 15 minutes. It didn't budge, guys. So I'm going to carry on vacuuming it for 90 minutes plus. Okay, so this is sat under vacuum all night, guys. Next day, got myself some refrigerant. Again, it is the Duracool. As I've explained many times, I cannot purchase R134A in Canada without a permit. So I'm going to put the equivalent of the measure that's required. I will show you in the manual how much is required for the SX4. So the equivalent is about, when you compensate for the lines, the service hoses, it's about a can and a third. So which is what I'm going to actually apply right now. Again, it's under vacuum, so I'm going to pierce the ball, bleed the yellow line here up to the top. I've already showed you guys all this. Don't forget, the SX4 manual tells you to actually open the high side first, then the low side, then close the high side, then start the car. Do not have the high side open when you start the car for obvious reasons. Again, this is all in the previous videos. There's no sense in me showing it to you again. Okay, so this is taking an unfortunate twist in the plot line here that I didn't expect, and it's nobody's fault but mine. You see the pressures there, how they're balanced? That's pretty normal, right? But when the compressor's engaged and running, obviously they shouldn't be balanced. They stayed balanced. The compressor's not engaging. I'll show you what the issue actually is. As you guys have probably figured out, I came at the top side here. Here's the compressor relay. All the powers are there. The 2 powers are there. The control is there, and it's on that end. It's on the clutch end of the compressor that is the issue. And you're probably thinking right now, well, what kind of dummy doesn't check the clutch operation first? I mistook the raise in idle as the clutch engaging. Yeah, in hindsight, I didn't hear the distinctive click that I normally hear. I just looked for the increase in idle, and I figured that was it. But that's on the control end of things, of course, not the actuation end of things. So again, nobody's fault but my own. But let me show you how I've proved it out here. I did change the coil on this compressor many years ago. It must be 6 or 7 years ago now, and I think I'm in the same boat. The clutch is probably overheated as a consequence of there being extremely low refrigerant, and I think it's open circuited. I don't think it's a coincidence that my cooling went extremely marginal and then all of a sudden the clutch coil is open, but it could be. I'm not making excuses. It could be. As I said, it's nobody's fault but my own. Make sure you check the clutch operation directly, guys. Don't just look for the you know, the raise in RPM. That's no good enough. As I have learned a hard lesson here. Let me just show you how I confirmed it. Okay. The logic requires that the engine be running, of course. The AC actually selected on. trying not to launch this thing off my ramps. And there you can quite clearly see my test light is lit, so the power is there. So just for a wee bit of context here, guys, so you can appreciate what I'm talking about. So here's obviously an exploded view of the compressor, and here's the coil itself, which of course generates the magnetic field which pulls in the clutch, engages the drive. So this is what I've actually replaced in the past. It's just a matter of dropping the compressor from its mounts. It can stay connected with respect to the lines, the refrigerant lines, and you know, then you can remove the in situ. You can remove all this down on your back and actually get to replacing this. It's not too big of a deal. As I said, I've done it in the past. So this is what is actually gone open circuit, so of course the clutch is not engaging. So just on the ohm scale there, guys, the coil should, as I said, I think it's about 3.5 ohms the manual specs out. I'm on the 50 ohm scale. Just grounded to the compressor body there. Just check it is grounded to the rest of the engine, which it is. And I will just go to the contact here. Sorry. Get onto the contact proper. There we go. And as you can see, it's open circuit. Yeah, that compressor's looking a lot worse for the wear, isn't it? Anyway, I guess this is going to turn into a 2-segment video, guys, that I didn't expect. I hope to do this in one shot. But yeah, I made the assumption that I only had one issue. That looked pretty obvious to me as a clear mess and issue, which it is. I don't regret replacing the condenser for obvious reasons, but yeah, I wish I had been a wee bit more thorough about this. As I said, nobody's fault but my own. So I'll get a coil and I'll replace it if they're still available. Barring that, I guess I'll have to see if I can obtain a used compressor. Certainly can't afford a new one for it, so it'd be worth the value of the car pretty much. Anyway, sorry guys, no fixing this this one. My mistake. I don't mind telling you I made a mistake. If you can learn from it, so much the better. I know I did. That's it, boys. Cheers.